As a leader, Matt, how do you think the current labor shortage is impacting the construction and engineering industries, and what strategies have you found to be effective in identifying and hiring the A players, which everybody wants to do?
I think it's an interesting time in construction. I mean, when I started in this industry, my family's been in construction for over 105 years. So when I started as a young kid.
Did you know that as of 2024, the global engineering labor shortage is projected to surpass 4 million unfilled positions? In the US, the demand for engineers is growing twice as fast as the supply of qualified professionals, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This talent gap is forcing businesses to rethink how they attract, hire, and retain top-tier talent to remain competitive in the space. In today's episode, I'm lucky to be joined by Matthew DiBara, CEO of the Contractor Consultants and owner of DiBarra Masonry. Matt is awesome. He was amazing. He talked about how you can attract top talent, how you can retain it, things you can do to better serve your clients and your customers, and really just grow your company. So if you work for a contractor, if you work for a civil engineering firm, if you work for an architectural services firm, it doesn't matter. The stuff that he gives you in this episode is gold. The way he thinks through things was so exciting, and I'm excited to share the episode with you today to maybe think about how you can hire better, retain better, build your business better. I'm Anthony Fasano, and this is the Civil Engineering CEO. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Matthew DiBara is the CEO of the Contractor Consultants and owner of DiBarra Masonry. Matt, welcome to the Civil Engineering CEO.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So, Matt, why don't you start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself, where you're located, what is it that you do on a daily basis, just to give a little intro.
Yeah, so originally from the East Coast outside of Boston, been in California for over a decade now. Co-founded a company called the Contractor Consultants, which is really about solving the hiring issue in the construction and the related fields. And then I own a company called DiBarra Masonry, where we do residential, commercial, and government concrete and masonry work.
Okay, awesome. So let's kind of jump in here. As a leader, Matt, how do you think the current labor shortage is impacting the construction and engineering industries, and what strategies have you found to be effective in identifying and hiring the A players, which everybody wants to do?
Yeah. Well, we built a 67 module course on this. It's like 8 hours of content. So I'll save you that. We'll go over some of the golden nuggets, but I think it's an interesting time in construction. I mean, when I started in this industry, my family's been in construction for over 105 years. And so when I started as a young kid, I'm the fourth generation in the family business. And I started before there was websites, internet. I mean, it was like the yellow pages was your marketing, and it was all word of mouth. And it was just, it was a whole different world. And I think what's happening now with the labor shortage, which is very different than how I started. When I started, it was like, if you let somebody go, you'd have somebody replaced before you even got home. Right? It was an abundance of labor, but now it's forcing companies to look at culture, look at retention, really focus on their team in a way that I think if the right companies take advantage of this, it could create an entire new wave of businesses. It allows smaller and medium-sized companies that are growing to have a competitive edge if they're focusing on this, because everyone's having the same struggles.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. I mean, we're a smaller business at EMI, and we've got a great team, and I think we've put a lot of emphasis on the culture, the experience for the team members. And I think that allows us to be competitive with the larger companies, because to your point, people aren't just looking like who can pay me the most money today. They're looking for the experience, right? For their ability to grow themselves as leaders, to work on really cool projects. And so I think you need to think about that as civil engineering companies, construction companies, architectural firms. You need to think about the experience that you're giving people and how you're supporting their growth. I think that's really, really important.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to sift through over 100,000 resumes in a month or do a couple hundred interviews a day with our team. We hire for businesses in the construction and related industries in the US and Canada. And what you get with that is a lot of data. And one of the things we've seen is like what makes a candidate leave, what makes them open to a new opportunity, what companies have a culture that makes it easy for new people to come in. And what we found is that pay is important. I mean, there's no sugarcoating that, but
Sure.
it's by no means, the leading factor. One of the things we do for our clients is a local labor market analysis. So hiring is a local sport, and typically, and what I mean by that is most companies don't know who their hiring competitors are locally. So they've never taken the position they're hiring for and Googled it as if they were the candidate, right? So we do this labor market analysis, and I'll give an example. We had a demolition contractor, and he was competing with big companies. He's like, they have massive 401ks and all of these big benefits. And he's like, I can't, like, my P&L doesn't allow for this. And so this was in the earlier days of what we're doing, when we would really be hands-on with clients. And we advised them on an incentive where in the field, the team would get a massage professionally once a month. And it was like that one simple incentive that made his company look so good from a hiring perspective, because not only was it an incentive, relatively affordable, much more affordable than a really expensive benefits plan.
Sure.
But it made the team feel good, and it brought everyone together. And so it's outside the box thinking and creativity when it comes to hiring now that allows companies to jump ahead, not just, hey, I can pay more and offer better benefits.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that a lot. There is different ways you can set yourself apart for sure. So, Matt, in your opinion, what are some of the most important factors in retaining and motivating this top talent to kind of, achieve the results you want to get in this competitive market?
So there's a couple of things I think we highlight. One is, assuming you're just hiring someone, really focusing on the first 60 and 90 days. So communicate early and often, have a really good onboarding plan, right down to a checklist. The first 30 and 60 days there's a lot of emotion, there could be fear, there could be uncertainty. I mean, it's a big shift. If you put yourself in the candidate's perspective, it's, hey, I've just left a career or job and I'm now entering a new one. What is this going to be like? I'm providing for a family in many cases. So having those things dialed in is really important. Having regularly scheduled check-ins is big. Like, we recommend a 2, 30, 90-day revolving. So 2-week check-in, 30-day check-in, 90-day check-in kind of makes it easy to get in front of things. So that stuff is foundational, and I'm sure many of you listening already have that. But assuming you have that, the next question becomes, how do we create a clear plan of growth in the company, right? What does that look like? Because one of the things we found in doing those hundreds of interviews a day is people feel stuck, or they don't know where they can grow in a company, or they don't know how. So having that clearly outlined is important. Another big one is understanding the individual and helping them grow as an individual within your company. And it's not all about work. It's figuring out their passions. I mean, when I was doing this in my construction company, I had people, I had someone in the office my office manager, and she said, as we were doing her personal development, she's like, I always want to learn how to read blueprints, plans. And so we invested in getting her a course, and we invested in the learning, and actually gave her time off. And what we got out of that was this feeling of, they see me as a person and they invest in my development as a person, not just as a team member, as an employee. So really segmenting both of those, and then asking yourself how you can reward what the team is doing. So we came up with this thing that we've been doing for over 5 years now. And it's, we used to have companies get company branded poker chips. And we would have, for the departments, they would design these spinning wheels. And it was like with a dry erase marker, and you could write rewards on it. And basically we would give a certain number out to each manager, and we'd say, hey, in a month, give these out and reward the things that you want to see more of. And we piloted this at my company years ago, and it was a smashing success. We'd have win a new pair of work boots was one prize, or, leave early on a Friday, 2 hours early was another. And it was just this constant, you'd give the chip, the team would go up and redeem it on a monthly team get together. And it created this excitement that wasn't this formal compensation plan that was it allowed for some flexibility. And I thought that was really neat, and something that anyone listening could just easily implement.
Yeah, those are really cool. And I really liked what you talked about with the example of the person there that wants to learn about blueprints and et cetera, and you enrolled her in the course. Because I think that if you can tap into what someone's passionate about and what they want to do, that's so much more important than saying, hey, we wrote this job description for you. This is what we want you to do, right? So I think that we've seen success with that here at EMI as well. And being, and committing to that, like Matt said, getting them a course, giving them the time off to do the course, supporting them in it. They're going to feel like my company really cares about my goals and my interests, and they're supporting me in that. I mean, they could go work for a company that's bigger. Maybe he's going to pay him another $10,000, but are they going to do that for him? Are they going to be working on what they want to work on? Are they going to listen to what they want to do? And I think that it's really like the human side of it, like listening to someone's passions and their interests and their goals, and then connecting them with that and being like a bridge to that. And I think that I've seen that so many times in my career where it's just like Matt said, it makes them feel like they're being really focused on, right? And they're not just like another number in the company, which is like so important today.
Well, if you're a small or medium company listening, the secret sauce here is that becomes your most competitive advantage, because we have clients that are really big. They might have 800 to 1,200 employees, and they don't have the ability to do these things quickly because they have to roll out a comp plan. It has to go through a budgeting department. It has to, then HR and legal have to, or HR and legal have to review it and say, okay, well, what are we giving and how is it tracked? And it might be a month and a half of compliance before it even rolls into a beta testing plan. Then if you're a small or medium-sized company, you can have an idea, go really deep on the individual and execute in a way that really large companies can't. So leaning into that, I mean, that's your secret weapon.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So Matt, you have something called 37 Proven Ways to Find Candidates. Tell us about it and how it can help CEOs and leaders with this labor challenge.
So yeah, when we put together the contractor hiring course, when we were done, we added up all the different ways you could find candidates, and there was over 37. I think there's so much opportunity in the industry. It's very difficult. I mean, according to the AGC, they're saying 80% or more of companies are struggling with hiring right now. So I don't want to make this sound easy. This isn't a silver bullet, but there's hundreds of golden PBs, right? There's hundreds of little things you can do that'll move the needle. Getting really clear on who you need to hire for and doing that labor market analysis is huge. But once you've done that, I mean, I could give you 5, 10, 20 different things right now, but one easy one, if you just want to take one away and do it, is incentivizing your current team. So individually sitting down on your next one-on-one and saying, hey, we're hiring for X position. And I discovered this about 6 years ago. I was having blood drawn at a doctor's visit, and I'm always recruiting, always hiring. So he asked me what's new. I said, business is growing. Do you know anyone that's looking for XYZ position? I could tell he wasn't interested. And I noticed he had a Dodgers keychain hanging from his pants. And I said, well, if you do happen to know anyone, I said, we're giving away really good Dodger sheets. I remember he turned, put the needle down, looked at me and said, wait, sorry, what were you saying? I said, yeah, we're hiring for this position. And if you know anybody, I said, the payoff, the benefit is really good Dodger tickets. He's like, my nephew just came back from college and he's looking for work. I think he'd be a good fit. Let me call him. We ended up hiring his nephew. He still works here today. The lesson I got from that was incentivizing the individual with something that they really care about. So think of all your team members, your current friends that you have. On an individual level, if you could offer something that they're excited about, we've seen people make 1, 2, 3 hires in 30 days just doing that one thing. And that's not, reaching out to trade schools or universities or posting to 20 plus job boards or keyword and headline testing. I mean, there's so much low hanging fruit in this space if you're dedicating the time to it.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I like that a lot. Incentivizing them, but again, to something that they're interested in, which is the key there. So let's talk a little bit about branding. What role does branding play in, pricing, just growing your business, standing out in a marketplace? Talk a little bit about your experience with branding.
Branding is interesting because I don't have a business background. Right. I grew up laying brick. So I went to school for construction management, environmental design later, but I never really understood business. And to me, when we built a brand on accident, so we're my construction company, 4th generation family business. And I remember my grandfather telling me as a kid, he said, treat customers like neighbors, treat employees like family, and you'll never have an issue in this industry. And I didn't really know what that meant until I started growing and taking over the business and we got bigger. And I remember telling people, hey, if this was your neighbor, what would you do? And they'd be like, well, I would do this. If you had to look at them every day and see them and it wasn't a quick fix, it wasn't there's a level of integrity there. And so to me, I simplify branding as the promise you make to your clients and the promise you make to your employees or your current team. And then how do you repeat and deliver on that promise? And if you think of like any big chains, right? Think of fast food restaurants, right? The promise they make and what they deliver on, or you can kind of see it distilled. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities, but I think it's one of the hardest things. It's like culture. It's hard to put your hands around it, right? It's like, what is a brand? Where does it fit in? Is it a statement? And to me, it's like, I'm a very simple guy because I go back to my roots of like laying brick, and everything on the job side is it's like, you can boil it down, right? You can distill it. Like there's not a lot of ethereal things on a job site when you're building a building, right? It's like the material to the job, it's got to be close proximity. You got to be able to install it. Where does it go, right? You get the steps. So to me, a brand is what promise are you making to your clients and being intentional with the promise. So deciding, are you going to be the lowest priced? Are you going to be the best service? Are you going to be, and so it's going through the exercise of saying, what is the market missing? And then what promise am I going to make to my clients? And then just making that promise appear everywhere and over delivering on that promise. So like our thing was ridiculous customer service. And like, when I mean ridiculous, I mean like when I was a kid, we used to like any area we worked in, we used to keep Windex and paper towels. And we would literally clean the windows at the adjacent area because of the dust. And we would take out their trash. We knew what day their trash was. And we knew, what days their irrigation systems went off, and we'd turn them off or on. Like it was this really, but that was never called a brand growing up. It was just my dad was like, hey, clean the windows. He was like, sweep the street, take pride in what you do. When I finally distilled this down and understood, I said, oh, this is a promise that we're making, but we weren't even telling clients. We just did it. And so when I put that on the out front and I really made the marketing about that, I made that more client and marketing focused, the company expanded massively. So what promise are you making to your clients that doesn't exist in the marketplace, or that you think you could do better, that people would be receptive to? That is your brand.
Yeah, that's great. And I really love your grandfather's analogy, right? It's really simple when you think about it. Like, treat your employees like your family, treat your neighbors like your clients like your neighbors, because it's an easy thing to ask yourself. Like you said, what if I need to live next door to these people every day? What would I do differently, right? I feel like in a world of overcomplicated things, if you can ask yourself some simple questions like that, it makes life easier. It makes business easier. And in my opinion, in building a business, is the easier you can make things, then the easier it is to grow your business. And, that's a really good recipe for those of you out there, whatever field you're in. I mean, we happen to have a lot of civil engineering professionals that watch this show, but nonetheless, you treat your team members like family, you treat your clients like your neighbors, and knowing that you're going to have to show up every day and see them could definitely dictate the moves you're making today. And I think that's great advice. So, Matt, what is geofencing, and how can geofencing and maybe other online strategies be used to, again, find talent, enhance your hiring processes in construction and engineering organizations?
So geofencing is a marketing technology, and it's used to place ads in front of people in a specific location on a specific device. So, for example, I can geofence if there's an event going on in a convention center, I can work with an agency to geofence, meaning set a digital perimeter around that area and then target certain devices. So if you pull out your phone or your laptop and you're scrolling through the internet, I can have ads show up on those devices and specific websites.
Extremely powerful and extremely targeted, of course.
Yes. And so if you find a company that knows how to do this on the hiring side, we found that you can geofence competitors, you can geofence locations. So for example, there might be a supplier, there might be a spot where a lot of your potential hires might go to learn something. It allows you to say, okay, where do large amounts of my prospective candidates go, and how could I target them? It's more of an advanced strategy. I mean, I would definitely say do a lot of the low-hanging fruit first. So if you're not posting to 20 plus job platforms, do that first. If you're not keyword and specifically headline testing, I would do that first. And that's something simple as running different headlines for the jobs you're posting. You can see a 3x increase in candidates just from doing that.
Yeah, that's great. No, and the geofencing is, again, it's an advanced strategy. As Matt said, it can be highly successful. I mean, I give you an example, just an analogy of this. I know like a lot of companies that sell products to golfers, for example, can just geofence a golf course, right? Hey, anyone that's within the area of the golf course, you're serving them ads on those products or whatever the case may be. So if you have a digital team that's well versed in that, and like Matt said, if you've done some of the other more basic low hanging fruit activities, that could be a good approach for you. And I would imagine too, for larger companies where you really have to hire large quantities of people, that could also be beneficial in helping you with that. So Matt, I want to hear a couple of questions on some of the things that you're doing with contractors. Talk to us about your virtual estimate process and how it has improved profitability, sales team efficiency. Take us through that.
So we were doing this before the pandemic, like well before that we started doing it. And the reason we started doing it was because I noticed that some of our products and services, we would send somebody out and they maybe didn't describe it right. And it was, like, hey, I've got a block wall, but then it's a brick wall, right? Or it's like some form of like a composite fencing material, and it wasn't actually a masonry wall altogether. And so I saw frustration on the client side. And then I saw on the sales side, our team would drive in LA traffic, you drive an hour to get somewhere and you spend 30 minutes there, and then you'd go to the next appointment. So you'd lose 3 hours. And one of the things I always try and do in business is when I see frustration or friction and I see it showing up on both sides, I immediately know there's an opportunity here. And so I always look for that. And I'll talk through the decision-making process. So I think anyone listening here can apply this principle to any area of their business or where they work. So I saw friction on both sides. I saw clients being like, oh, I wish I knew this, or I wouldn't have had you come out, or, hey, I didn't know that you didn't do, I didn't realize this was a pool person's job. So I saw it on the sales side. And so what I did is I put a selfish hat of me just being the selfish client on. And I wrote on a whiteboard all the things that I want as a client, right? I'm like, I want fast, easy. Like, I want to be able to do it from my couch. Then I put on my sales hat and I said, I'm a salesperson working at, DiBara Masonry at the time. And I put all the things I want there. Drew a Venn diagram and I found where the overlap was. And that was the birth of the virtual estimating process, where we took the things that the clients would want, like, we wanted it detailed, but as the client, I don't want to take 17 photos and make it super hard. But as a salesperson, I'm like, the more info I have, the better. So it's like, how do you bridge those things? And that was my Venn diagram example that we did. So that's how we came up with it. And it's a streamlined way where clients upload photos, pictures, or FaceTime. And with some basic measurements or some rough idea of square footages and whatnot, we're able to give a price within typically plus or minus 5%. And these calls are typically 10 minutes long. And so one person in the office can do 4 of these calls in an hour in excess of 30 a day versus 4 to 5 in-person appointments.
Wow. So that's awesome. That's awesome. And I would imagine just your process that you explained there could really be utilized in construction and other areas, and civil engineering services and architectural firms. Whenever you have like that friction that you described, you can kind of step back, look at it from both sides, and try to come up with a solution that would be kind of more of a win-win for everybody.
Well, yeah, I'll give you another example just to get whoever's, for the listeners to think about how they can apply it. We had people would call up on the phone and they would ask technical questions, and get somebody experienced, and like who we had answering the phones didn't have the technical knowledge. And so there was friction on there and be like, I don't know this stuff. And I went, oh, that little light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, friction for the highly experienced, some of our clients are engineers, right? And so they're like technical. They're like, what size rebar do you use? How do you space it out? And the person on the phone's like, I don't know. I could schedule a meeting, and they want an answer right away. So we put in a process where we could patch them into a project manager or an estimator like within a minute and answer all of their technical questions. So now what I've just done is made that client get an experience, because again, I'm putting my client hat on. I'm like, look, I want to know an answer. I want to quit because I'm selfish. I'm thinking about just me as the client.
Right. You're trying to think of it in their perspective.
Yep. Exactly. And so that was another process that we implemented where it was like, should go, oh, I don't know this, but do you have any other questions like this? And they'd go off a list. Like, I want to know this. They'd be like, great. Can you hold for 30 seconds? I'll put you in touch with someone to answer all your questions. Done. But it was that same process of friction and external and internal friction. And I'm like, okay, there's an opportunity here. What is it?
I like that. I'm an entrepreneur, so I like that, because you're solving problems, right? You're finding problems, you're solving problems for multiple people. You're looking for win-wins. And I think what Matt said that's important to think about here is you have to really be able to put yourself into the mindset of the customer, right? Into the mindset of the provider, and look at both sides of it. And I think that you can do that in anything. If you're growing a business, you could do that by thinking about your employees. Like, hey, our PTO process. If I'm an employee, what's easy for me, right? I want to go on the calendar and put my time in. I want to just ask one person and be done with it, type of thing, right? So, like any process in your business, you can look at it from the different parties involved in that process and what makes it easier for all of them, right? And that's kind of your winning solution. And that can apply probably on a lot of levels, actually.
Right.
So, what have you learned so far from some of these improvements that you've made, like the estimate model? Like, has that given you any like bigger lessons in business, or that you've just been thinking about and applying in other areas?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just, I think whenever I can take a universal principle and apply it to all areas, I think that's when I've really struck gold. The way I make decisions is I look at kind of macro trends. I look at what I call like the headwinds. Like, where is the general industry going? So if we look at our industries, right, we're
Yep.
everything's more streamlined, more online, easier, right? Like that's kind of the North Star of what we're doing. And then I just apply that to anywhere I see friction or opportunity, right? And so I also look at what hasn't been innovated on in the last 10, 20, 30 years. So I'll give you another example. We were typing up proposals, and I remember thinking the way I write a proposal is very similar to how my grandfather wrote proposals. The only difference is we're doing it on computers. Like it was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was very similar. And I was like, it takes a lot of time, right? Like the salesperson has to like write it all up. Clients have to read things they don't understand. So we created a process where we would document video estimates, because I did the same exercise. So I looked at it from the client perspective. I'm like, do I want to, do I understand what all this jargon is? Well, some people do, but some people don't. On the salesperson side, it's like, it's hard to be like, that area we're going to fix, or we're also going to do that. We've even taken videos, or we do screen recordings over a set of plans. So we have a software where we'll actually like talk through a set of plans from a screen recording. And it's helped us innovate in a way that is pushing the business forward. And it came from me being like, gosh, there's got to be an opportunity here incorporating tech, because I'm doing stuff the same way my grandfather did. And so now, like, if we're bidding a big commercial job, we don't just send a proposal. We might send a screen recording where we're like, hey, and it's 3 minutes long. We're like, hey, just want to walk through my proposal with you. So we included this. Here's our takeoff. And we're scrolling through the plans. We're like, we didn't include this. If you want us to, let us know. Like, mind blowing. I mean, the response. And it came from that same process of like, where do I see stagnation or friction? I'm always looking for like, what's something we haven't changed in 10 years, or what's something that just is causing that friction?
Yeah, that's great. We did something similar with our proposals that we sent to clients. We do like a screen video summary of the proposal, basically. Same idea. They're not going to sit there and read 20 pages or whatever it is, right? They'd rather watch a video for 2 minutes. But what I found that's also helpful about it is they would say, oh, this is great. Can I share this video with my leadership? Right? It makes it easier for them to get approval, not have to go explain it to someone else. You're making their job easier on the other end too. So I think, to Matt's point, thinking about the whole process and how you're going to make it easier for your client in a lot of ways is going to just help you as a business, because if they can get the project approved quicker and sign on quicker, then everybody wins. So I think that's a great approach. And Matt, the last thing I want to ask you about is kind of ask you about leadership. You seem like someone who's a leader. You fourth generation, you came into your business. You obviously had to learn a lot. You've built yourself up now to being a big time, leader in the company, obviously. Just like, give us some leadership advice. Like, what have you learned as growing as a leader over the past years that you would give to someone out there? It's hard for like contractors, engineers who are technical to become leaders, because our background is like just technical and analytical. So what advice can you share that you've learned about leading people, leading a company, that has kind of been the big takeaways for you on leadership, the big things that you lean on?
Well, my leadership was accidental. I mean, I became a leader through hitting a cap where I was. So I started at 9 years old. On my first day on the job, I was picking up trash. My dad handed me a trash bag. He's like, pick up all the trash, the electricians, the plumbers, so on and so forth. And so I started at the bottom. And I think, leadership for me came when I couldn't grow anymore. Like, I was a lead mason. And then it was like, I can't lay any more brick. This is it. This is all I can do. And then it was like, okay, I became, a foreman. I'm running jobs. Then it was like, this is easy. And so for me, my relationship with leadership was I always came from a place of having usually done the roles underneath the team that I'm working with. I had a deep understanding of how things worked. And I came from a place of service. And I think my lessons came from seeing what didn't work. Like sometimes my dad would come to a job and he'd be frustrated. He'd be like, what the heck is this? How come this didn't happen? And then like, I'd have to be with the team the rest of the day. And they'd be like, man, your dad, he's like, why is he so upset? I'm like, oh, well, he's running 6 jobs and he's best, but we'll take care of it. So I learned what not to do. And I think for me, I simplify it. It's like, how am I serving the team? Right. So it's always team focused for me. I'm not a big title person. I look at how can I incorporate everyone's voice into what we're doing? So like, I remember my dad would do these things where wherever there was a problem on a job site, we'd get everyone involved. So like, I remember we hit a water line and water's just gushing out. And my dad just gets everyone there, 15 people on a job site. And he's like, all right, what do we do? And we had this new guy on the team and we didn't know that he had plumbing experience. And he's like, oh, I've done a bunch of these before. He's like, I have a kit in my car. He says, can I just fix it? My dad's like, that was easy. And I remember thinking on that day, I'm like, I never would have thought that this guy who had been here for a week would be the solution, as opposed to the project manager my dad had on the site super, the foreman. Like and that carried with me this thing that I've taken through my entire career, which is get everyone's feedback and input, make it an idea-based team, and then ask yourself, how can I make things easier and better for the team is what I'm always asking. And then how do I clarify and quantify the goals? Like those are the 2 things I'm always thinking about is how do I make sure everybody knows where we're going and what their contribution means to this bigger goal? And that's all I do. I mean, I don't really have like I'm probably a little light on the formal leadership trainings, but it's just like, that's how I've done it. And it's worked for me.
No, it's great. I mean, I think what I can tell about you in a short conversation with you is you like to find things that are, simple but impactful, right? Because as a leader, to me, if you can explain something to someone very simply, but it has a big impact and it sticks with them, I think you're going to be successful in leadership, right? I mean, I find I spend a lot of my days trying to say, this is what I want us to do as a company, but I kind of need to find a couple of sentences to explain it to someone, right? Because that's the world we live in. Like people don't have a lot of attention spans, but if you can hit them with the right thing and be impactful, you're going to move people forward, move companies forward. And so I think that is a big part of leadership. And I like what you said about, for you, leadership was like doing something the best I could. And then the next step was leadership, right? Like you said, I was a mason for a while, did as much as I could. And then it was like, start running projects, right? And I think that's a good way to describe leadership is like, you do your job the best you can, you learn everything about it, and then doors are going to open for you, right? And as a leader, if you know what your team is doing inside and out because you did it before, you can be a great leader for them, right? Because you know what they're going through every day. You know the struggles that they're dealing with because you dealt with them. It goes back to what you kind of been talking about this whole episode, which is getting inside of the mindset of people. And if you've done that job before, who's better to you than to step up and say, all right, this is how we can do it better. Now I can lead this team. I know what I'm doing. So I think what Matt's given us here is a really great kind of recipe for building a business, hiring people, being a better leader, right? And, appreciate the examples that you've given us kind of from your family that you've passed down, which seems like they've really stuck with you and kind of resonated. So once again, Matt DiBarra. Matt's the CEO of the Contractor Consultants. He's also the owner of DiBara Masonry. Matt, I appreciate you spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering CEO, sharing kind of some of your insights and what you've learned through your career. I think it's going to be really helpful for the audience. So thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Matt. Great guy, really could explain kind of difficult things in simple terms, which is why I think he's become a great leader. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineering professionals become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.